Okay, verse number 28. 28. Mark. Or, sorry, Jim, my bad. Mark.
Then Gaal, the son of Ebed, said, Who is Abimelech, and who is Shechem, that we should serve him? Is he not the son of Jerubbaal, and is Zubal not his lieutenant? Serve the men of Hamor, the father of Shechem, but why should we serve him?
Okay, so Gaal, or dung beetle, the leader of the rebellion, probably a Canaanite, scoffs at the credentials of the half-breed Abimelech, right, because his mother's a Canaanite. He mocks at his credentials to rule, and also he mocks at the sacrilege of his father, Gideon, who tore down the altar of Baal that this guy probably worships. He desired for the city in the region of Shechem. Gil desired for the city and the region to be under the leadership of one of the descendants of the ancient Hivite rulers of the city, like what he is, who were the children of Hamor. Okay? Hivites, the children of Hamor, way back when, during the patriarchal era, ruled and reigned in and around Jericho. So his heart's desire is to see the good old days come back. Genesis 34, 1 and 2. Now Dinah, the daughter Leah had born to Jacob, went out to visit the women of the land. When Shechem, son of Hamor the Hivite, the ruler of the area, saw her, he took her and he raped her. Okay? So, Hamor the Hivite, that's why we see in verse number 28, his longing for them to serve the men of Hamor. Make sense now? Verse 29.
Would therefore that this people were under my authority, and I would remove Abimelech. And he said to Abimelech, increase your army and come out.
So God, likely being a Canaanite descendant of the children of Hamor, which I'm sure he was, he vowed to reclaim his inheritance. That's what's at stake, his inheritance. He's vowing to reclaim his inheritance, and therefore he publicly challenges Abimelech to a full-front war. This is the civil war that Jotham, 3+ years earlier, predicted would happen when he was shopping down from Mount Gerizim, speaking to the coronation crowd in riddles and in parables and all these kind of things. This is what he said is going to happen. Verse number 30, Lane.
When Zabel, the governor of the city, heard what Gaal, son of Ebed, said, he was very angry.
Okay, Zebul, his name means exalted, something like that, exalted. He was the governor of Shechem. He was the governor of the Canaanite stronghold city of Shechem, showing the intimate political relations that Israel had at this time with the Canaanites. The Israelites and the Canaanites, I would surmise they worked more together than they did not together, with buying and selling and foodstuffs and politics and maybe even coalitions for war. Okay? Now, Zebul was likely a Canaanite, was possibly, this is a possibility, he was possibly appointed governor of Shechem by Egypt. Because Egypt had their long hand and their mighty power was shown in this region during this time. Go to Bet John, right? They found the reliefs of the Bet John, of Ramses III, and etc. Okay. Now, there also could have been some blood relation between Zebul and Ephraim and Manasseh because of their policies, their fostering policies and working together. It's just a possibility that there could be some blood relation there as well. Nevertheless, the Israelites did not drive the Canaanites out of the land like they were supposed to under Joshua, but they're still dwelling among them. Okay? Verse 31. Got it.
And he sent messengers to Abimelech secretly, saying, Behold, Gaal, the son of Ebed, and his relatives have come to Shechem, and they are stirring up the city against you.
Okay, thank you. Zebul, or exalted, the governor of Shechem, probably appointed by Egypt, acting as if he is complying with Gaal, sends a secret message to Abimelech the king, who did not apparently reside in the city of Shechem at this time. Who apparently did not reside in the city of Shechem. And maybe the people have turned within the city. Maybe they've turned against Abimelech. Okay. Verse 32. Ron.
And therefore, up by night, thou and the people that is with thee, and lie and wait in the
Here's a representation of probably what, if you lived in verse 32, what you would be seeing. Marching by night to avoid any kind of detection, Abimelech and at least his 70 men, who were like his inner circle, his secret service, they were to hide in the fields, these kind of fields, around Shechem. All right? Now, in antiquity, these fields would have not only been filled with wheat and barley and other kinds of cereals, but with gardens of vegetables and orchards of all kinds and many different wells. Springs would have been in the area and given them much needed camouflage and even resources for some kind of surprise guerrilla attack. All right? Verse 33. Wow.
And it all shall be, as soon as the sun is up in the morning, that you shall rise early and rush upon the city. And when he and the people who are with him come out against you, you may then do to them as you find opportunity.
All right. Knowing the intricacies of the walled city of Shechem, right? The men of Abimelech were to arise as soon as the inhabitants were awakening out of their slumber and would have been unprepared for battle. Not only that, maybe the sun would have been in their eyes as well, because I'm sure that the gate opened to the east. Wherein Abimelech was to punish them as he pleased. Well, you have to wonder about that. Would there be ramifications from Egypt? If it is an Egyptian stronghold with an Egyptian governor? You know? I don't know. Verse number 34. 34.
So Abimelech and all the people who were with him arose by night and lay in wait against Shechem in 4 companies.
All right, thank you. In 4 companies, arising from the orchards and the gardens and the valleys and amongst the steeps of Gerizim and Eval, the men of Abimelech laid siege on the walled city on all 4 sides, likely with layers, like we're looking at here. 4 companies, it says in verse number 34, as you see, is represented here in a representation of an ancient Egyptian military unit. Okay? Verse number 35.
Now Gaal, the son of Ebed, went out and stood in the entrance of the city gate. And Abimelech and the people who were there with him arose from the ambush.
Okay. The gate likely being oriented towards the east. But then again, if there were more than one gate, for sure there would have been also to the west. Now, I doubt the gate was oriented to the west, but let's just say it was. If it was, and if there was only one, it would have emphasized the cultural and religious and political connections with the western coastal plain, because the gate would have been open towards the west. And that's where all of the international opportunity is, to the west. Go down 44 on the Hall Shechem till you hit Highway 80 or something like that. Okay? And whatever, nevertheless, this is apparently where Gaal went first thing every morning since his coup d'etat. Okay? To administer his rule. So he came to the gate of the city, where he would have got some kind of security briefing of some way, shape, or form from the sentries and the watch at night. Would have surveyed the lay of the land. What's the weather going to do today? How's the wind blowing? What's the date on the calendar? All these kind of things. And in the gate of the city, probably would have started his day with offering some kind of incense sacrifice to Baal or something like that. Right? Verse 36. Mike.
When Gaal saw them, he said to Zebul, "Look, people are coming down from the tops of the mountains." Zebul replied, "You mistake the shadows of the mountains for men."
All right. Looking, now we know for sure that at least one of the gates, or the gate, is to the west, because they're looking towards Gerizim and Ebal. So looking towards the west on the mountains of Gerizim and Mount Ebal, Gaal spots the men of Abimelech, at least the 70 men of Abimelech, swarming towards the city, but he's rebuked by the under-the-radar loyal governor of Abimelech, the governor of the city, Zebul, who says, "Oh, you don't know what you're looking at, you're just looking at the shadows." Okay? He's covertly, Zebul is covertly plotting against Gaal and attempting to give the forces of Abimelech more time, right, to get closer to the city. Verse 37, John.
Gaal spoke again and said, "Look, people are coming down from the center of the land, and one company is coming from the direction of the diviner's oak."
Okay, likely still groggy and just awakening and kind of zeroing in and keening in his vision. Gaal clearly sees men attacking the city from, quote unquote, the middle of the land and the quote-unquote plain of Meonamin. Now, the plain of Meonamin probably received its name, the plain of Meonamin. It probably received its name after this event, as it means the plain of to make an appearance. The plain to make an appearance. Okay?
What a horrible place for a city to have a defensive position like it's setting between those two mountains.
Well, exactly. It just gets run over.
Yeah.
Or the place name of the plain can also mean to act covertly. To act covertly. So representative of the accounts in verse number 37 and following. Now, on a different note, the middle of the land, you might have a different translation, I hope you do. The middle of the land can be understood as descending from the heights of the mountains. Now, later, about I don't know, 700 years later, whatever, 500 years later, the Samaritans understood the city of Shechem, but more specifically Mount Gerizim, to be the navel of the earth. That's also a possible reading of middle of the land. Another reading of middle of the land is navel of the earth. The navel of the earth, from which the invisible umbilical cord reached from heaven and connected to earth. Just like the Jews believed in Ezekiel 5:5, that Jerusalem was the navel of the earth. Just like the Babylonians believed that Babel was the navel of the earth, or the middle of the earth. So do the Samaritans, okay? Verse number 38. Who's got it? Bob?
Then Zebul said to him, Where indeed is your mouth now, with which you said, Who is Abimelech, that we should serve him? You are not these people whom you despise. Go out, if you will, and fight with them now.
Okay, thank you. Recalling what the usurper in his drunkenness vowed to impart to the king, that inconstant and unreliable and fickle Gaal is unknowingly encouraged by Zebul to cross the threshold of the gate, go into the field, and enter his political demise. Verse number 39.
So Gaal went out before the leaders of Shechem and fought with Abimelech.
Thank you. Leading the military formation with the armed men of Shechem and likely the other descendants of Hamor, Gaal departs the walled city to fight in the environs, in the fields of the city of Shechem. Verse number 40.
Abimelech chased him, and he fled before him, and many fell wounded up to the entrance of the gate.
Okay. Pursuing Gaal, by the way, you're looking at gate at Shechem, right there. Pursuing Gaal, knowing that his death, the death of Gaal, would likely stop the battle, and inquiring his sword was as sharp as his mouth, the Canaanite usurper departs from his grasps and from the grasps of Abimelech and flees back to his hometown. Now, the rest of Gaal's forces thoroughly cut and cast down and fatally pierced through with the sword, so much so that Abimelech and his men came to, but apparently did not yet enter the gate of the city. 41.
Abimelech stayed in Arumah, and Zebul drove Gaal and his brothers out of Shechem.
Okay. Now, upon the removal of the descendants of Hamor from Shechem, and the re-establishment of Gaal as the sole governor, or Zebul, as the sole governor, the king Abimelech retreated back to his previously mentioned, maybe they were his summer quarters, okay, at Arumah, which is probably about 5 miles southeast of Shechem in the hill country of Ephraim, which you can see right here on the map. And geographers identify the site, modern day name is Khirbet el Orma. And you can hear the Arabic name Khirbet el Orma in Arumah. Orma, Arumah. You can hear the etymological link between those two names. All right? So, after the defeat, in other words, Abimelech goes back here. Okay? Goes back to Aruma. Verse 42. Who's got that one?
On the following day, the people went out into the field, and Abimelech was told.
Okay. So here are the fields that the people would have gone out into. Likely breaking a decree, a curfew from their king. The conquered people of Shechem leave the walled city. Possibly trying to depart in fear of the soon expected return and retaliation of the king that they disavowed, Abimelech. They're afraid because he's coming back. All right? Verse 43. Ron?
And he took the people and divided them into 3 companies and laid wait in the field. And looked, and behold, the people come forth out of the city. He rose up against them and slew.
Okay. Verse 43. As was the apparent custom, at least in this time in the Israelite army, the formation of the army was such that Abimelech divided his forces into 3 units. And we see this again in Judges 7:16 with Gideon. And he executed the apparently unarmed rebels. The unarmed rebels would be the fire that came out of the bramble in the previous parable. These are the ones who disposed him as king and broke his decree not to depart from the city. Okay? Verse 44.
So that was a prophetic parable?
Sure.
Then Abimelech and the company that was with him rushed forward and stood at the entrance of the gate of the city. And the other 2 companies rushed upon all who were in the fields and killed them.
All right. While the other 2 companies were collecting and executing those people of Shechem who were trying to flee the city, Abimelech and his gang penetrated the gate of the city to not only prevent those who were outside from getting back in, but also to seek and to destroy those who were not loyal to Abimelech within the walls of the city. Verse 45.
Abimelech fought against the city all that day, and he captured the city and killed the people who were in it. Then he razed the city and sowed it with salt.
After conquering the vast majority of the city, Abimelech, quote unquote, sowed it with salt. Whether he literally cast salt upon all the ruins of the city, so nothing would ever grow there again, or whether he, which I would think, he symbolically tossed a handful of salt upon a parcel in the victory. Well, I guess we'll never know, but I'm sure he did the latter. Nevertheless, this was a common custom, the sowing of salt among ancient Near Eastern kings. A tablet discovered in Nineveh in 1854 by Layard from the reign of Ashurbanipal, who's mentioned in the Bible. He's from the 7th century BC. It mentions, you can see here, the city of Elam, and not on this portion, unfortunately, of the relief, but it shows Ashurbanipal, it shows him destroying and punishing the city of Elam for their rebellion and destroying the temple of Elam, and it shows him going like this, sowing their land with salt. So, if you want to take it that they're going to actually literally spend all of that money, take all that time and energy to sow handfuls of salt over, a 60-acre town, whatever, I doubt it. I'm sure just did that. Okay, verse 46.
When all the leaders of the tower of Shechem heard of it, they entered the inner chamber of the temple of El-Bereth.
Okay. It is possible that the tower, which, there you go, there it is, at least the foundations of it. It is possible that the tower was it located within the city or was it located outside the city wall? I'm not sure, but nevertheless, perceiving the tower to be penetrable, the men enter into the temple of Baal for kind of like a last retreat. Okay. Verse number 47.
When Abimelech heard that they had assembled there.
Okay. Verse 47. Now this is not the kind of tower we're talking about, but here's a representation of an 18th, 19th century tower. This tower would have been in a vineyard, a watchtower. But nevertheless, you get the idea of some kind of tower. And as was the custom, temples were normally highly fortified, like the temple in Jerusalem, very highly fortified. Because not only functions as your temple, but it functions as your Fort Knox, as your bank. So the temples were highly fortified and would have provided the remnant of the inhabitants of Shechem an apparent foothold as scouts informed Abimelech of their whereabouts. That is to say, the scouts informed Abimelech that the people had now run into the temple of Baal and locked themselves in it, and right, this is kind of like their Masada. Okay? Verse 48.
And Abimelech went up to Mount Zalmon, he and all the people who were with him. And Abimelech took an axe in his hand and cut down a bundle of brushwood and took it up and laid it on his shoulder. And he said to the men who were with him, "What you have seen me do, hurry and do as I have done."
Okay, so Abimelech leads the way. His forces following him. They come to Mount Zalmon. That is to say, literally the shady mountain, which was probably some kind of a shoulder of Mount Gerizim or Mount Aval. And upon reaching the shady area, they cut down the brush, right? And we'll see what they do with that. Verse number 49. Ron?
And all the people likewise cut down every man his bough from every nettle, and put them to the hole, and set the hole on fire among them, so that all the men of the tower of Shechem died, also about 1,000 men.
Okay, so all of the soldiers of Abimelech cut the brushwood, and they used it as kindle to set ablaze the Tower of Baal and to burn alive or even to smoke out all those who were set up within that fortification. Verse 50.
Then Abimelech went to Thebez, and he encamped against Thebez and took it.
Okay, it is probable that Abimelech next comes to Thebez, which means brightness, a daughter city of Shechem, because that was the hometown of Gaal, the Canaanite usurper, and the son of Ebed. Now, St. Jerome, the 4th century genius and church historian, mentioned the town on the border of the outskirts of Shechem at his time. Okay? Verse 51. Bob?
But there was a strong tower in the city, and all the men and women, all the people of the city fled there and shut themselves in. Then they went up to the top of the tower.
Okay. The late Bronze Age which would be 1550 to 1200, more towards 1200 in this context though. Late Bronze Age or the early Iron Age 1. Iron Age 1 is 1200 to 1000 BC. The fortification would not only have been used as a watchtower in times of peace, but as a strong tower during a siege. Verse 52. Jim.
So Abimelech came to the tower and fought against it, and approached the entrance of the tower to burn it with fire.
After toppling the town of Thebez, Abimelech seeks once and for all to end the rebellion by attempting to set only the door ablaze, since the tower was likely constructed totally of stone. And, well, let's see what happens. Verse 53.
More surprise. But a certain woman threw an upper millstone on Amalek's head, crushing his soul.
The upper and lower millstone mentioned in Job 31:10. The upper and lower millstone in practicality functioned as the necessary mechanism to grind flour, grain, wheat, barley, etc. In the entire ancient Near East, the upper and the lower millstone were two of the most frequently, if you lived in that world, seen objects, and not in the same way, but comparable in necessity to a fridge and a refrigerator. I mean, everyone had them. You had to have them. Okay? Now, the millstone cast from the tower would have weighed anywhere from probably 5 pounds and up, probably made of hard basalt stone. Verse 54.
Hurriedly he called to his armor bearer, "Draw your sword and kill me, so that they can't say a woman killed him."
Oh, man.
Oh,
Being killed by a woman, friends, would have been a perpetual shame. Not only for a man in the ancient Near East, but for a quote-unquote king, whatever his title is. It would have been a perpetual shame for this man of war. It would have been a stigma that would have been associated with his name forever. Now, fatally wounded mighty men of war would often beseech their armor bearers to slay them, with the hope that their legacy and honor would be untainted. Like who? Think of someone? Saul, right? In 1 Samuel 31:4, he asks his armor bearer to kill him. Right? All right, verse 55.
And when the men of Israel saw that Abimelech was dead, everyone departed to his home.
All right. Upon the death of their captain, the battle was apparently immediately over, which we suspect that would happen. And all returned not to Shechem, but to their tribal allotment given to their forefathers by Joshua. The label or the name of Abimelech became a sort of classic in Israel narrative storytelling and lore, and was later, as we'll see here in 2 Samuel 11:20 and 21, the label or the name of Abimelech was applied to any leader foolish enough to act like Abimelech. Who killed Abimelech, son of Jerubbesheth? Didn't a woman drop an upper millstone on him from the wall so that he died in Thebez? Why did you get so close to the wall? 2 Samuel 11:21. So he goes down throughout history with a perpetual shame right? Like,
Don't be an Abimelech.
just pick a politician. Okay, we won't name names here. Okay, I guess. We'll just keep going. I don't want to get in trouble with this being recorded. Okay. Verse 56. Verse 56, Ron.
As God rendered the witness of Abimelech, which he did unto his father, and slain his 70 brothers.
Okay, it is ironic, it is very ironic that the man who dishonored the memory of his father and executed his brothers on a stone was now killed by a stone. Verse 57.
And all the evil of the men of Shechem God returned on their own heads, and on them came the curse of Jotham, the son of Jerubbaal.
As the head of Abimelech was crushed with a millstone, so the recompense of God was laid upon the heads of the men of Shechem for assisting Abimelech in slaying the innocent sons of Gideon with the destruction of their land and their family now. The two staples of the fabric of ancient Near Eastern society are really up in the air. Israel is acting like the Canaanites. The period of the time of Abimelech is a depiction of what would have happened to the nation of Israel if they continued going down that path and did not have the judges to stop them and to call them back to God. As you'll notice from this portion, we did not have our usual cycle, did we, of sin, servitude, supplication, and salvation. But that's one of the main thrusts of the 9th chapter of Abimelech, that if Israel was allowed to continue under his reign and under his authority, they would have ended up totally destroyed. And it's only the judges who call them back to the God of Israel. Okay?